You are lying in bed at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, running the same mental math you've run 1,000 times. Rent, car payment, that credit card bill you've been avoiding. Your phone buzzes another friendly reminder from your insurance company that your premium went up again, for no damn reason. And you think to yourself, what the hell am I doing wrong? Here is what they won't tell you on CNBC. The median bank account balance in America is $8,000, not $80,008. As in the cost of a used Honda Civic. As in 2 months of rent in most cities. As in one medical emergency away from total financial collapse. If you've got more than that sitting in your account right now, congratulations. You're statistically wealthier than half the country. Let that sink in for a second. Half of American households are working full-time jobs, commuting in traffic, missing their kids' soccer games, grinding themselves into dust, and they have less than $8,000 to show for it. Not because they're buying Gucci bags and taking trips to Bali, because there is nothing left after the basics. My name's Paw, and I've spent way too much time digging through Federal Reserve reports, consumer finance surveys, and the kind of data that makes you want to throw your laptop out the window, because the story these numbers tell is completely different from the bullshit you hear on TV. The economy is booming. The stock market hit record highs. Unemployment is low. Inflation has cooled off. And yet you feel like you're drowning. You're not crazy. You're being gaslit by a system that measures success by metrics that have nothing to do with your actual life. If you want to understand how money really works and why understanding it is the difference between staying trapped and breaking free, hit subscribe, because the people who get rich aren't smarter than you. They just know the game is rigged and play accordingly. Let's talk about what is really going on. Here's a stat that should make you uncomfortable. 67% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. And before you think, well, that is just people making minimum wage, think again. This includes software engineers making $150K a year, lawyers, marketing directors, people with fancy job titles and LinkedIn profiles that look impressive as hell. They get paid on Friday, and by the following Thursday, they're checking their bank balance like it is a horror movie they can't look away from. Where does it go? You know, exactly where it goes. Rent that somehow jumped 30% in 3 years. Groceries that cost double what they did in 2020. Car insurance that doubled for literally no reason anyone can explain. A mortgage payment that eats half your take home because you bought at 7% interest like an idiot. Except you weren't an idiot, you just needed somewhere to live. The money doesn't disappear because you're irresponsible. It disappears because the math doesn't work anymore. But wait, it gets darker. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans, 24%, to be exact, have zero emergency savings. Nothing. Not a rainy day fund, not a cushion, not a break glass in case of emergency account. Nothing between them and total financial meltdown. If the car breaks down, they're screwed. If they get sick, they're screwed. If the water heater explodes, something that costs like $1,200 to fix, they taking on debt just to have hot water. And here is the part that pisses me off. It is not because these people are out there buying lattes and avocado toast. That narrative is garbage. It is because after rent, after utilities, after putting gas in the car to get to the job that barely pays enough, there is nothing left. Zero. The number in the account matches the number of options they have. You've probably heard that inflation has come down. News anchors say it with a little smile, like they just delivered good news. And technically, they're right. The rate of increase has slowed. But here is the scam they're not explaining. Prices didn't go back down. They just stopped going up as fast. If something cost $100 in 2020 and now costs $125, and the rate of increase slowed from 9 to 3%. Cool, but that thing still costs $125. The damage is done. It is baked in. You are paying 25% more for everything, forever. That is not inflation cooling off. That is you getting permanently screwed. While they adjust the wording, your grocery bill didn't get cheaper. Your rent didn't go back to 2019 levels. Your health insurance is still a joke. Everything just stopped getting worse quite as fast. And somehow that is supposed to feel like victory. Meanwhile, wages, if you got a 10% raise over the last 4 years, you are lucky. Most people got 3%, maybe 4%, if their boss was feeling generous. The gap between what things cost and what people earn has turned into a canyon, and nobody's building a bridge. You're working the same hours, probably more, and buying less. That is not an economic recovery. That is a controlled demolition of the middle class. Here is where it gets twisted. Turn on financial news and you'll see champagne and confetti. The S&P 500 broke records. GDP is growing. Corporate earnings are up. Everything's amazing. But go talk to actual humans. Go to a family dinner. Go to a barbecue with your friends. And listen to what people are actually saying. I can't afford to move. I'm one bad month away from disaster. I have no idea how I'm going to retire. Both things are true at the same time. The economy is doing great. The people in it are not. This is what I call the split screen economy. On one screen, you've got asset owners, people who bought houses before 2020, people with stocks and 401ks. Their net worth went up on paper, they refined. On the other screen, you've got everyone else, people living off wages, people renting, people trying to get a foothold while the ladder keeps getting pulled higher. If you already owned a house when prices went crazy, congrats. Your net worth probably jumped by $200,000. But here is the dark joke. You still feel broke because you can't eat equity. You can't pay your electric bill with unrealized gains. Your house went up in value, but your monthly costs are strangling you. And if you don't own a house, if you're trying to buy one now, you are looking at a median home price of $400,000, mortgage rates at 7%, and a monthly payment that would eat 50% of a solid middle class income. The math literally does not work. The starting line keeps moving, and every year it moves further away. Now let's talk about the anchor dragging everyone underwater: debt. The average American with credit card debt is carrying nearly $7,000, and 46% of people who have credit cards down to pay them off every month. Nearly half the country is paying 20%, 22%, sometimes 25% interest on money they've already spent. Let me run the math for you because this is the kind of thing that should make you physically angry. If you are carrying $7,000 at 22% interest and making minimum payments of $140 a month, it will take you 94 months to pay it off. That is almost 8 years. 8 years of payments. And over that time, you pay $6,160 in interest alone. You'll pay nearly double what you originally borrowed. That is not debt. That is a trap, and the credit card companies designed it that way. They're not hoping you pay it off. They're counting on you not being able to. That is their entire business model. They make billions off people who are too broke to pay their balances, but desperate enough to keep charging. And the psychology is brutal. When you're stressed about money, when you're exhausted from working 2 jobs, when you're just trying to keep food on the table and your car running, you stop tracking every purchase. You swipe the card and deal with it later. Later becomes next month. Next month becomes next year. Suddenly, you're paying interest on the pizza you ate 6 months ago. You're financing your own desperation. Let's break down debt by generation because this tells you exactly who is getting crushed the hardest. Gen Z, the youngest adults, are carrying about $34,000 in debt on average. Sounds manageable until you realize they're just starting their careers, and most of that is student loans and car payments. They're in the negative before they even begin. Millennials are carrying $132,000. Mortgages are the big driver, but also student loans that never seem to shrink, and credit cards filling the gap between what they earn and what life costs. But the real debt champions, Gen X, people aged 45 to 60, are carrying $158,000 on average, the highest of any generation. They're the sandwich generation, paying for their kids' college while helping their aging parents, all while trying to save for their own retirement that is barreling toward them like a train. They're getting squeezed from both ends, and the numbers prove it. Even boomers, people who theoretically should be coasting, are carrying an average of $92,000 in debt. Many are still paying mortgages or helping family members financially, eating into whatever retirement cushion they managed to build. Nobody is winning except the people collecting the payments. Here is something that should terrify you. Americans were asked how much they think they need to retire comfortably. The number they came up with, $1.26 million. That is not retire and never work again money. That is just stop working without panicking money. And most people will never get anywhere close. Let's look at median retirement savings by age, not averages. Averages lie because some guy with $10 million drags the number up and makes everyone else look better than they are. We're talking about the median, the real middle, under 25. Median retirement savings of $2,800. Ages 25 to 34, about $15,000. Ages 35 to 44, around $35,500. Ages 45 to 54, roughly $61,500. Ages 55 to 64, People staring retirement in the face, $87,500. Let me be absolutely clear. $87,500 is not enough to retire on. If you withdraw 4% per year, the standard safe withdrawal rate, that is $3,500 annually. That is $291 a month. You cannot live on that. Social Security helps, but the average check is about $1,900 a month. Add your savings drawdown and you are looking at maybe $2,200 a month total. Try paying rent, buying groceries, covering healthcare, and living any kind of life on $2,200 a month. That is not retirement. That is poverty with extra steps. Here is the truth. Nobody wants to admit out loud. The system isn't designed for you to win anymore. It is designed to extract credit card companies' profit when you can't pay off your balance. Landlords profit when housing consumes 40% of your income. Employers profit when wages stay flat while productivity soars. Insurance companies profit when you're too scared to question the bill. You're not falling behind because you're irresponsible. You're falling behind because every institution in your life has figured out how to take a bigger cut and your paycheck hasn't grown to match. The numbers prove it. Adjusted for inflation, wages have barely moved in 20 years for most workers. But cost healthcare, education, housing, childcare, the stuff you can't cut from your budget, the non-negotiable expenses of existing as a human being, those have exploded. You're making more money than your parents did at your age nominally, but in real terms, you're poorer. Your purchasing power has been shredded. This is why you feel gaslit when you hear about how strong the economy is. The economy is doing great for the people who own pieces of it. For everyone else, it is a slow motion extraction. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't fix the economy. You can't lower interest rates. You can't make rent affordable. You can time travel back to 2019 and buy a house at 3% interest, but you can stop measuring yourself against averages that are broken. If you have anything saved, you are ahead of 24% of Americans who have nothing. If you're making progress on debt, even slowly, you're moving in the right direction. If you're aware of the game being played against you, you're already further ahead than most people who are sleepwalking through the extraction. Focus on the gap. The gap between what you earn and what you spend. That is your margin. That is your weapon. Even if it is $50 a month right now, even if it feels pathetically small, that gap is what eventually becomes your emergency fund, your down payment, your escape hatch from paycheck to paycheck living. The system wants you broke and stressed because broke, stressed people make bad decisions. They take on high interest debt. They buy things to feel better. They stay in jobs that pay less than their worth because they can't afford the risk of leaving. Break the cycle, not by becoming a monk, not by cutting every joy from your life, but by understanding that every dollar you keep is a vote for your own freedom. The numbers don't lie, the headlines do. You're not crazy for feeling like something's wrong. Something is wrong, but you're not powerless. You're just playing a game where nobody told you the rules. Now, what you do next is up to you.